I'm really happy that you're joining us today for a new era of CyberLove, Reimagining Porn Platform Regulation. I'm Lisa Völzmann, and I'm reading for a doctor at the Faculty of Law at the University of Oxford, where I'm also a research assistant, and I will give an insight into the legal framework, the Digital Services Act that we're talking about today. So let's jump into that. All right, so the main intention of the Digital Services Act is to foster a safer online environment. And the Digital Services Act is regulating... thank you so much. The Digital Services Act is regulating digital services and platforms that are operating in the EU. And the Digital Services Act has been dubbed a censorship law as well as the constitution of the internet. So it has been received very differently. But who is the Digital Services Act regulating? It is distinguishing between different types of online platforms. And the online platforms we're talking about today are very large online platforms under the Digital Services Act. And these are digital platforms that have over 45 million active monthly users in the EU. So these are the tech giants that we know: Amazon, Booking.com, Facebook. And in the porn sector, it's Pornhub, Xvideos, and StripChat that the European Commission designated as very large online platforms. What are now the obligations that these very large online platforms have to comply with under the Digital Services Act? You can see them on the slides. First of all, there's a risk assessment and risk mitigation. So we have a list of risks in the Digital Services Act that is, for example, the dissemination of illegal content. So in our context, this would be content about child abuse or content that is disseminated without the consent of the person that is pictured in that content. And after the platforms do this risk assessment, they also have to implement measures to counter these risks. And again, the regulation, Article 35, has a non-exhaustive list of measures that these porn platforms can integrate. For example, we can find here adopting the algorithms that the platforms are using, for example, for the recommender systems. And we can also see the content moderation that they should adapt. For example, to improve the speed or the quality of taking down illegal content. Another risk mitigation we have concerns child protection, so we can also find in this non-exhaustive list age verification. Another obligation we find in the Digital Services Act is the independent audit. So the porn platforms have to, at their own expense, once a year, pay an independent auditor who is auditing if they are complying with the obligations in the Digital Services Act. Again, we also have a research data access, Article 40 of the DSA, that allows vetted researchers to access the data, for example, to assess the algorithms that are used on the platforms. And this data can be accessed for systemic risk. Not every data can be accessed. Another obligation we find in the Digital Services Act is the recommender system transparency. So the recommender systems that the platforms are using, they have to be written down, or the parameters of how these recommender systems are working have to be made transparent. And for very large online platforms, there also has to be an option for the user decide that they don't want a recommender system that is based on the profiling of the user. But this only applies to very large online platforms, which are the platforms that we are talking about today. We also have trusted flaggers, which are recognized by the so-called digital services coordinators, so sorry. Digital service coordinators in the member states, so every member state has one. And these can be NGOs, civil service societies, and they are not reliable flaggers, but trusted flaggers. So the content that they kind of flag is trusted by the platforms. We also have transparency reports, so these are just reports, for example, on the content moderation on these platforms. All right, now that we have an overview of the obligations that we can find in the Digital Services Act, Alex will give us an overview of the socio-economic view on these porn platform regulation.
I guess I have to turn it on, yeah? I work? Yeah. Okay, cool. So, thanks. This is me. So yeah, I'm Alexandra Keiner. I'm working as a researcher and economic sociologist at the Weizenbaum Institute. And yeah, my focus is on financial infrastructures, which might be interesting today. And maybe some of you were yesterday at the other talk. So I'm more in the political and also the regulative power of payment actors or financial infrastructures, which is quite interesting for porn platforms. So I have like three perspectives on this topic. So that's why I just first want to say why I was interested in this topic, and also from an economic sociologist perspective. The first is like the regulation of shadow markets, even if it's like a huge industry, it's quite not unknown, but we don't speak about. And also because of that, and also because of the regulative gaps, we have more informal markets or even illegal markets in this area. And yeah, the regulative role of payment actors. Maybe I showed the example. So for now, who was like regulating porn at all? So we have all these big platforms like Pornhub, Xvideos, StripChat, but also a lot of others like OnlyFans, for example. And like let's say the financial institution had a real, they have a lot of power in different areas like gambling or others. Sometimes even working with with countries or regulators together to say like we have already like legal norms and just they have to be enforced, and then they say maybe you might help us, for example, not allowed to pay for illegal content. But sometimes the content, it's not illegal, it's just like maybe immoral, maybe bad for the reputation, like for PayPal or for Visa or MasterCard to be involved in this area. But yeah, also because something changed, like at the beginning, Visa and MasterCard was making just money with porn in the internet. And then with the digitalization, some things change about the risk assessment, as you also said, that it's quite complicated for them to say what is illegal content, what is illegal content, especially with pornography. So that's why they say we don't allow it at all. So that's why they say in their terms of services, for example, that no pornography or anything related to pornography is allowed, but we know that you can pay. I mean, I don't know who's using this sites, but you can pay on Pornhub for your account, for your premium account with PayPal. So as you see in this, it's a quite old example, but here Pornhub just quitted, like to work together with Pornhub, but not with Pornhub at all as a whole company, but just with the performers, because the performers were more related to sex from their view, and the platform being just a platform, more or less a data company, so they are not doing something wrong. and also not the advertisers. So for the platform at all, everything worked out. So they had the money from their advertisers, and they could still work, but the performers, so the money flow between the platform and the performers was cut, which was a big problem for a lot of performers. And not even that it was cut, some of them were flagged at all, so they couldn't use PayPal or Visa at all, even for, I don't know, paying for Airbnb or paying for other things. So that's why I was quite optimistic when I heard, and I know that someone is on stage, that was one of the reasons why now it's part of the DSA, that now maybe this big power of the financial institution is it's getting lower, because they are like, yeah, American big companies with normative ideas on this, yeah, on this area. And the other thing, I don't have time probably, but just to say, like, also the power structure of porn platforms. So porn platforms are platforms, and they are working in the same way. They have the same business models, and they have a lot of concentration of power, and also for rule setting, how much they pay, what kind of videos are flagged, what kind of videos are pushed, what kind of videos are monetized or not, or demonetized. So all these things are like normal in the platform economy, to say. So that's why it's necessary to also regulate them as platforms and not just as porn platforms, let's say. So yeah, for now that's it. We can maybe discuss later. So I'm giving.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Alexandra. Yeah. Well, I mean, porn platforms are platforms. That's absolutely a good starting point for what I'd like to talk about with you today. Because this is exactly what happened basically 1 year ago. There was the DSA, Digital Services Act, that was being implemented and being ready to come into force. The European Commission was drafting the first list of these very large online platforms, so those platforms that have 45 monthly users within the European Union. And all the most obvious names were popping up, right? You can imagine Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and so far and so on. Everything was based on voluntary disclosure of these platforms. And for some reason, none of the porn platforms that we know of was appearing in this list. This is quite surprising, especially when you consider that, for instance, Pornhub has been listed among the 10th, actually, it was the 11th most visited website in the world last year. Now it's the 15th because things are not going that well. But this is simply because there is another platform called Xvideos, which is based in Czech Republic. So actually this time we're talking about the European tech giant, which is quite rare. And they used to be the 9th. Now they've taken the spot of Pornhub as the 11th most visited website in the world. I'm not talking about porn platforms in particular, but websites in general. Now, when the list of VLOPs first came out, the first list, there were no porn platforms. And this left a lot of researchers and digital rights activists like us very surprised. And for this reason, what we did was basically creating a public campaign, an advocacy campaign. We gathered up different stakeholders, different organizations and individuals, and we went directly to the source, to the European Commission, and we exposed the problem, a problem that was hiding in plain sight, because it was of course obvious that the numbers that they were presenting. Imagine that Pornhub was trying to say that they only had 33 million monthly users, when their main competitors was already saying that they had 111 million. So we're talking more than three times the numbers. And so the math simply didn't add up. The European Commission received our concerns and actually immediately accepted and acted upon it, recognizing the urgency of what was necessary, but most importantly, backing up the estimation of the monthly users with the research center that they have in Sevilla, which is exactly dedicated to this kind of ascertainments. And this is why Christmas last year, December 2023, we saw the designation of the first 3 very large online platforms of the pornographic sector. So we're talking Xvideos, the first one, Pornhub, the second most visited porn platform in the world, and StripChat, which you may not be familiar with, because it is actually the 6th most visited porn platform in the world. So it's clear that there is room for improvement, but we want to celebrate the success for today, and this is definitely something that we have welcomed as a good step in the right direction. And I must say, a direction that was not easy to take, because to put together all the stakeholders of this field, it took a lot of time and a lot of patience, a lot of listening, and a lot of collaboration. Because the stakeholders that are interested in this field are many, and not every time on the same page with some issues. We will get to that in a second. But if you imagine that there are for sure digital rights advocates, as I was saying, that are concerned about big tech accountability and privacy, but at the same time there are also survivors of gender-based violence and people that want to counteract this very concerning social phenomenon. And of course, the interest and even the vocabulary that they use for their work is different. Again, we also have sex workers and sex workers' rights defenders, which are people that base their livelihood on these platforms, and yet again, of course, have to struggle every day with the stigmatization of this sector and of their work, but at the same time suffer from the bad influence that these tech giants are having in the sector itself. And then there are also sex tech builders, so actual ethical porn platforms or other builders of technology related to sexuality, related to digital intimacy, that struggle to thrive, to grow, and to develop their business, and they're relegated to the very margin of the industry because of the gatekeeping of these tech giants. And you see, before delving into the perspective and the possibility, the other solutions that we can imagine for this sector, I wanted to share with you what at least I've had the chance to observe as some of the hot topics, the hot problems that right now are still very difficult to solve, are still creating a lot of friction and make it quite difficult for all the stakeholders to be involved. But it's very important to understand that we must solve this issue. We must take the time to find the right answer to these problems, because there is no solution where we just rush to whatever could be the enforcement of the Digital Services Act or any other regulation without considering all the stakeholders involved, because we might have we might risk to have a cure that is worse than the disease. And this is quite clear in these dilemmas that I listed here for you, because, well, of course, the first one that you see in the top left is this dilemma, which is probably also a fake dilemma, and I'll tell you why in a second, between the overpower of tech giants on one side that are completely obstructing and dominating the market, not allowing any other new idea to thrive, any other business model to even just have a chance and see if the market reacts well to it. And there is them on one side. And on the other side, ultra-conservative groups, people that are pushing on the moral panic related to such a distributed and public sexual expression, because we must recognize that the rise of so-called porn 2.0, so these porn platforms based on user-generated content that are exemplified by Pornhub and Xvideos, they have, of course, changed our culture because they have allowed explicit material to be so freely accessible for everybody. And this has triggered a moral panic that is now pushing harder than ever. Just to give an example, one of the politicians following in the US, the Trump wagon, is saying that if they win in November in the US, one of their agenda items for 2025 will be to make porn illegal in the US in general. And imagine, first of all, there is, as a lawyer, I must specify that there is a big difference between making something illegal and making something disappear. So they simply are removing, they're simply trying to remove the legal protections of the few that there are on this topic. But anyhow, this dilemma must be broken, because this is just something in which we are stuck, but we should not partake, because we cannot side with one group or the other. We must create the third way, and this is exactly what I'm a little bit conscious of time. Do I still have 1 minute?
You have 1
yes,
minute.
Thanks. This is definitely what we have to do today. We have to think of a third way, and a third way that must be, of course, aware also of these other issues that I will very briefly refer to. One is the dichotomy between fighting gender-based violence and therefore conveying the urgency of stopping the abuse oftentimes an image-based sexual abuse that is happening on this platform, but at the same time avoiding stigmatization. For instance, it's very important to avoid referring to porn platforms as the crime scene, which is something that we often hear, because of course it can be counterproductive if we want to be able to keep together, not to alienate other categories such as sex workers. Another very big topic, and we will get to it in the following, in the remainder of this panel, is the problem between protection of minors. So for instance, ensuring that, well, of course, not only counteracting child sexual abuse material, but also making sure that minors do not access adult content in an uncontrolled way that might be harmful for their sexual development. But at the same time, we must remember the right to privacy, data minimization, and right to anonymity. We must not fall into the temptation of deploying technological solutions, quotation mark for that, that would actually turn into quite concerning surveillance machines, such as it has been proposed and actually already acted upon in the UK, or also in Australia, the idea of asking people to show their ID when they go on porn platforms. Imagine the nightmare when the porn history of somebody is lost in data breach next to their ID. Quite concerning. And last but not least, as I was saying, there is the issue of the next generation of sex tech that is trying to propose alternatives, and the old order, the ancien regime, of sex tech, in this case porn platforms, that are blocking them. All these issues must be addressed if we want to imagine a better future for the porn sector and the digital intimacy as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Alessandro. So, so that's me. I'm Irma Mastenbroek, and I am normally a mathematician and data scientist, and I met Alessandro last year, right at the end of him writing the letter with the coalition. And at that time, I was focusing more my energy on the feminist perspective in the artificial intelligence governance. So at the time, I was researching for the Alexander von Humboldt Institute, doing feminist artificial intelligence focus points, and was invited to talk with Margarethe Verstager at like a roundtable. So I went down into the European AI Act to kind of look for the feminist issues that I cared about. So I look for Control F porn, and I see no pornography or deepfake pornography in the AI Act. Super confused. I'm like, hello, we're talking risks of platform, or like risks of AI systems, and then we forget about like the biggest risk of all to all of our girls and everyone who can be involved. And I was super confused by this, and it really put some fire under my ass to work in this field of feminist tech governance, right? So I mention it being eco-feminist governance because I kind of believe in the fact that the suppression of nature and the suppression of women is part of the same dichotomy. So it's kind of doing the same type of thing, right? So for me, it's like connected. So what we see in the Digital Services Act, we can actually see in other pieces of legislation as well, because a lot of this legislation is written by a whole bunch of men that care mostly about digital things, and they care less about whatever girls have to go through online, right? So very important for us all, like the adults, to think about what it's like to grow up on the internet and to be confronted with not only the internet itself, but with other people, in this case like boys and everyone else that grows up watching porn every day, right? And this has a huge impact on our development, and a lot of the conversations that are not being held in policy rooms are actually being held by all of the girls in our society that are talking to each other about how to empower themselves in these conversations with men that do stuff to them that they don't want, right? So we need to figure out some way to have them be influential in how we shape these platforms in the future. Because a lot of also young girls watch like porn. I started watching porn also young, and a lot of us did. And it's good to have it not be stigmatized, but at the same time also understand that there is a lot of harm being done by not talking about it with the adults, right? The deepfakes I kind of touched upon already. So I can maybe talk to you a bit about my other type of project that is more into the grassroots internet movement. So I do a project called girl blogging to save the internet, which is basically the idea that we want to take the girls that are online and get them offline to bring them back their community that they so deeply need, right? Because since we have so much social media and growing up on the internet, we actually see a huge decline in the mental health of especially younger girls, and that's mainly because they are missing community. We think so. I want to take them off the platforms into a safe group and try to imagine what the internet would look like if it was shaped more by girls. And I think that kind of ties into the pornography movement as well for me. In the next slide, I wanted to maybe talk to you a little bit about why it is actually, like really interesting to be in this field. We can see here the Guardian article that says that OpenAI considers allowing users to create AI-generated pornography. The reason for this for them is that they say actually it should be good for artistic purposes, and also it's like not illegal, right? Because we didn't make any laws about it yet, which is why we are here to make some laws about it. And yeah, you can actually see through this type of thing, because all of the big tech companies, they understand if we don't get on board of this like pornography train, then we are not going to survive the competition that is inside the field. So even the companies like OpenAI that have trying to look like more or less ethical leftist type of platform. It's not a platform, but technology. They are also kind of thinking about, how can we still create space for this pornography? So the time is really to act on this type of stuff is really now. We really need to get onto this in the right moment. I think Alessandro, with his efforts with Coalition, created a really beautiful, with this DSA, is really stunning that we can now regulate platforms under it, and also really funny and interesting is that it would have never happened if it was not for the DSA. If it would have come from like digital rights advocacy, that we want to regulate the porn industry, it would have probably never happened. So it's really because we said it's a platform and it's big that now there is this huge regulation that is in the making. So I'm really excited to turn over back to Lisa.
I'm also really excited. Let's specify that deepfakes are regulated under some laws. For example, under the GDPR, if an image that is used from the person and then put into a deepfake, then that is...
And shared, right?
And shared, that's
because
right.
If people just take it at home and don't share it with anyone else, it's still legal.
It's a gray area, I would say.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the problem you touched upon. Right, perfect. Now that we got some insights from everyone, let's have a little discussion. And we start our discussion with, what about age verification? Thierry Breton, the Commissioner for the Internal Market, says that an enforcement priority of the Digital Services Act is the protection of minors. But is age verification really the way to go? What do you think, Alessandro?
No. No, of course, the topic of age verification, which is the buzzword that actually should be referred to age assurance, allow me this moment of being a little bit more scrupulous on the terminology, is a big one. I was hinting towards that also earlier, because we have a problem. We do. It's a fact. So these platforms, as we said, are full of this content. They're super easy to be accessed. 30 years ago, this was unimaginable. Of course, there are all these funny stories I hear from previous generations. We hear of the magazines hidden in a garage or even in a forest, and then the kids trying to sneak into a shop and get their hands on that VHS, that hot tape. But it was still something very very marginalized, and somehow also the content that was available on these different media was maybe less concerning. Because what is happening now with these porn platforms, the porn 2.0 and the algorithmically enhanced content creation and that we're we're seeing is that you see the same way that we see on social media platforms like Facebook when it comes to political advertisement or political content, where you see this rise on extremism in political arguments. We see it also in pornography and in sexual representation to artificially improve the engagement of users. The algorithm is suggesting to make more and more extreme material that raise a lot of concerns in itself, but also for the kids, for the minors that are exposed to this material. So I see the problem in exposing minors that are in a very fragile state of their sexual development and their development as a people to this content. But at the same time, I'm very concerned, as I was saying earlier, in seeing that this has become kind of an excuse, as almost as a Trojan horse, because all these right-wing groups, all these conservative groups, abolitionist groups, they're saying, yes, we have to think of the kids, we have to save the kids, but what they're actually saying is we have to go against sexual representation, we have to stop what is, in all effects, a cultural revolution that this tech giant has unwillingly facilitated, but I think more precisely hijacked and colonized. Because I am really sure that the digital world was somehow empowering people to have a better expression of their sexuality. And then when the tech giants came into the picture, they kind of confused it, a little bit as it was happening with all these ideas about internet as a global village. So what to do with age verification? I honestly don't think that the solution must be something technological. And I also don't think that it can be something legal. It's not with stricter rules that we're going to fix the problem. In my opinion, the solution must be cultural. We need to understand that as a society, it must be easier for young people to have sex education, to talk about sexuality. We have to embrace the sexual revolution that is coming through this technologically enhanced distribution of adult content. But basically, we must have the sex talk on a global scale. If we will be able to do it or not, this I don't know.
Yeah, Emma, I think you also want to give some context,
Well,
maybe also about the different ways age verification can work.
Exactly, because maybe I agree fully also, but let's just put on a little different thinking hat here. Because there are a bunch of different ways to do the age verification. I'm not a complete expert on this, but I've seen in the discourse a couple coming by, and they are either concerning or ridiculous, I think. So one of the ones that is being used most often in, for instance, I heard in gaming a lot, is that they ask you to open your camera and then you do like age verification based on your facial features, and then they kind of guesstimate your age, right? So they're like, you look about old enough, and then they grant you access. That's, I mean, yeah, choose for yourself. That's one. And then the one that we heard about actually on the CCC conference, so that's the Chaos Computer Conference. Do you know maybe about the European identity card thing that they are going to roll out over the society? That you need to log in with your identity card to get into Facebook or all these other social platforms. I think a part of this idea was to take the same idea to Pornhub also, so that you just need to log in with your European identity card. I will say, in terms of data protection, the type of way in which they are trying to solve it is in a way that there are something that's called zero knowledge proofs in tech. So what they want is that you, like Pornhub can basically ask the user a question, which is like, are you over 18 years old? And then the thing will just only reply back yes or no. So it will not see when is your birthday or who you are, but yeah, you still have to log in with your identity card. And I will say that there is, in terms of like how to get this whole system into place, because it works in like theory, but in practice there will probably be databases that store most of our stuff. So it's not really fully as secure as the like tech bros are making you believe, right? Because in practice, a lot of these, maybe we saw with Cambridge Analytica and all these other data breaches, they say, no, it's completely safe, can't break into it, and then someone finds a way to break into it, right? So we cannot say immediately that will be a safe option, but it's also not like you have to show your ID card every time. Somewhere in between. Did I miss one? Other one?
No, I think we have a good differentiation between having the age verification by the state or the European Union in form of this EID, or having private actors having the age verification. For example, having biometrics that you talked about. Yeah.
I remember one more, because there is also. Do you know that Pornhub every year releases their Pornhub Insights? Yeah, Pornhub Yearly Insights. They do it, I think, for Christmas or something every year. It's like a festive moment. And then they show a lot of the data that they know. So they know which country people are watching from, what are people watching in each country, like they know all sorts of things. And among those things, they probably also know your age. So they probably know, based on like the cookies that you have on this website, that you are this age, that you watch this type of porn. By the way, also, all of other companies can buy this information online, right? Like you can, all of your information that you have on, people that you, if you apply for a job and these people are doing this background check where they buy your data, then they can find your search history on Pornhub as well. Fun fact. So that, I think, was the last one I know about age verification.
All right. Does someone want to add something on the age verification? Yeah, sure. Sorry. Alex, go ahead.
Because what you said about that they probably know. I hope with the DSA probably we know also, because this is like always about the kids, but in the end, it's the question also like, is this a problem? How many underage are, I don't know, having an account there, like watching it, like all these things we can also now take it from the platforms and see how many people are involved in this. And also to say, like, I guess that porn, like big porn platforms also want to be kind of regulated because MindGeek, I always say the old name, but ALO. So the company behind Pornhub, it's already working on an age ID, also together with a kind of ID driver's license in the US. So they want to bring the solution and want to work together with companies because they get stronger and they get bigger, and then they have the solution also for smaller companies. So I guess this is also, let's say, like we have to keep this in mind, not to give them with this regulative thing also more power about this. So it was just, I'm not such an expert on age verification. It was just my...
Oh, great. Good. Let's jump to the next question that we want to discuss today, which is, why is a feminist perspective important in that regard? And maybe, Alex, do you want to start this time?
Yeah. Wait, now why is it important? You already said, like, when you say feminist perspective, this is like an old debate on porn and feminism, and it's complicated to say. It depends also what you say as feminism, and to say I don't want to blame porn industry, but of course is like the most performers are women also in the global south, and the people like the distributors, like the platforms, and also like the advertisers, they're mostly men, and also because, as you said, it's like a user-generated platform, and they are working with clicks, and they want to push like what is probably most likable, and this is probably also like stereotype sexuality that they have. So that's why, of course, there is a lot of queer porn, and you have a lot of different. I mean, it's huge, and then there is some diversity in it. But I would say it's really hard to see it. It's really hard to also get money from it. Also, like the people have to, like the performers have to earn money with it. And if they are not shown, if they are suppressed by the algorithm of these big platforms, then it's a problem, I would say. And that's why we also have to keep this in mind, that they also have a kind of moral view, also the porn platforms on this. And this is probably heterosexual and heteronormative masculine ideas of also, especially of women. I also wanted to add, because of the age verification, we should also say, like, it's complicated at all, like in society with age verification, because we say about all the kids that are watching it, but in the end we have like from porn insights is the only way that we know things. It's like that barely 18 or barely adult is a thing. So I think this is a huge problem that we have in society already about kids and their and their sexual liberty and determination, I would say.
Yeah. No, you established greatly that this is a male-dominated industry. However, the issue that it's regulating, or an issue that we touch upon, the deepfakes, it's an issue that mostly affects women. So we have a study from 2019 that says that 96% of deepfakes that were generated to that point were images that were non-consensual, and 99% of these deepfakes were made of women. And I think this is a topic that's very close to your heart, Irma. So what's your point on the feminist perspective?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, with the headphones is not perfect. So it's completely correct. And it was also therefore really interesting to see it not be in the AI Act, right? Because it was like a little bit mentioned, deepfakes in general, they focus on like political deepfakes and misinformation deepfakes, which actually, as you mentioned, like 96% of all deepfakes in general were sexual, non-consensual deepfakes of women. So the fact that that was not in there just shows really a lot about like how big the patriarchy is in this conversation. And apart from that, it's like not only connected to our gender, but as you mentioned, it's like intersectional as well. So the feminist agenda is also focusing a lot on like the racial aspects that are very harmful in the pornography industry, because people are highly racialized. It's very problematic what you see on the platforms, and this ingrains into people's being also, which can be very painful as a lived experience for a lot of people. So I think why the feminist perspective is so like helpful also to take into account is because it, like more so than only providing a problem, is really good at providing a way of creating, co-creating a solution with the with the community, because part of this how do you say, like way of regulating that feminist and intersectional feminism is thinking a lot about like community engagement, like how do we come up together with like a way of keeping the society safe. So if you look at like in sex-positive spaces, for instance, here in Berlin, we all live here, I think, yeah? No, not everyone. But in Berlin, the sex-positive space is super big, and this is a super feminist space, you know? So the experience of the women is really put in the forefront, and if a guy will, or a person, anyone will misbehave a couple times in the scene, then next time they will be rejected entry, and it will be harder for them to engage, because the experience of the women is very important in this place, because it's just not going to be very fun if you have only heterosexual men, right? Could be fun with only gay men. But and so I think the feminist perspective is super nice to not only look at the problem from all of these different layers, to look at, you know, because you also see that the feminist perspective is sometimes mentioned in the regulation, but not really put at the top. So it will be put somewhere in the appendix and then forgotten. So they're like, yeah, we did a lecture about it, and then that's good enough, right? And we really need to engage everyone to say, no, actually the feminist agenda is for like 99% of all of us. It's created for like the mass of the people, and it's a way to solve problems together, I think. Yeah.
Alessandro, do you want to add something on that?
I mean, I think a lot of very important things have been said, and I don't know how I can contribute to a conversation on feminism when already so many good things.
You can have an opinion on
feminism. No, maybe I have a question, because I think at soon we will open also the mic for questions from the audience. So maybe if there are interventions from the public on this topic, instead of saying an opinion, I would like to raise an open question. during this work of advocacy and movement building in the field of pornography, a very big question has been raised from the feminist perspective, because we know feminism is a very long journey and it's divided in waves, and there were different times, for instance during the 80s, when pornography in itself was considered anti-feminist, was considered an instrument of the patriarchy, and sometimes there have been very interesting arguments against the entire sector. So for me it was a little bit surprising in the beginning, because I would imagine that coming from a progressist and inclusive background as feminism is, it should be always in favor of sex work, for instance, or sexual representation in general. But I've understood that, for instance, some have said during the current political climate and given the current societal norms, engaging in pornography can be extremely dangerous and eventually serve patriarchy. So my question for you, but also for the public, or in general, to bring home afterwards is pornography actually feminism compatible? Because I would say yes, but then again, as I said, I don't want to make a strong opinion on this one.
Let's do a quick fire on what porn regulation do we wish to see, and then we open the floor for your questions.
Okay, so I can immediately jump into this because I have one that touches quite nicely. This is, let's just say, a hot take, okay? So I'm saying this with like, we are going a little bit into dream area of mine. I would love to see, because it is like, right now the porn industry is a lot like men make stuff for men and use women for it. And I feel like that is difficult for women then to choose how they present their own sexuality. So I think that it can be a lot more intriguing and interesting to look at like through the eyes of a woman and how she would have set the stage up. And I know, for instance, BDSM is a very like popular category amongst every woman, or like not every woman, sorry, but like a lot of women. And this intrigued me when I was younger, because I was actually a bit like kind of, I don't know, my inner feminist was kind of like, why am I watching this stuff? Like it's so extreme. And you know, it's I don't know. And then I actually later learned in like watching documentaries. I also grew up in the Netherlands, where there is like a lot of conversation in the society culture about porn. We watch a lot of like their state television about the topics. And I learned through this sort of channels that actually a lot of the BDSM stuff is screen-written by women, right? So it's actually super funny to see. So what I would love to actually see, but hot take, I would love to see only women doing the female representation of sexuality. So men can do their part, but we want to do our own part in the future, is my suggestion.
All right, so you're coming from a regulation point that's self-regulation from the platforms, or regulation from the regulator?
Yeah, I will say I don't really think that this is very likely to happen, right? I don't think it would actually happen. I just say, what if we say that if you want to have porn company online and if you want to make this type of stuff, then you just need to be a feminist organization. If you want to do work with women in this like vulnerable setting, then you need to be a feminist organization.
All right, Alex, what's your take on porn regulation?
Yeah, because I heard that we are now in the dreamland, so that's why I have also some maybe crazy ideas how to regulate porn. I guess the first thing what you said is that we also have to accept that there is porn, and that porn could be also outside the platforms. And I would say maybe it should be also politically supported to produce porn. I mean, every other kind of like movies or theaters or whatever, they get funded. And that's why we have so much diversity in this. So I guess it would be necessary to also fund porn that is different, because otherwise it's really hard to earn money with it while it's like that. So it could be one regulation. And I will also regulate the other platforms, like not only the porn platforms, but also the big tech, on how they also platformize and demonetize porn or porn-related things. Because when we say like, okay, children or kids they need some education, then it has to be somewhere probably in the internet because they're using it. And if it's flagged, then it would be just on the porn platforms, and this could be problematic. So it should be another space for sexual expression, also on the normal. I'm sorry, like on the other internet. Let's say. That's
Right.
my.
Thank you, Alex. Alessandro, what's your take on porn regulation? What do you wish to see?
Yeah, outside of the dream world, from a purely regulatory point of view, sorry to pop the dream bubble, we need more transparency. The sector needs to be way more transparent, and even more specifically, we need competition law. We need antitrust. We need to interrupt, which is what is basically a pyramid scheme that is happening right now in the porn sector. Because in any other sector, in any other industry, what is going on right now in the porn sector would be considered absolutely anti-economic, absolutely inefficient and crazy. Instead, right now we have these incredibly big tech giants. ILO, you mentioned ILO. ILO is a conglomerate that contains more than 170 companies, and they have the whole production line of pornography, from casting to production to distribution to advertisement and so far and so on. And this cannot be good for the industry. Not only for the simple fact that, as I was saying before, there are other economic actors that are trying to participate in the market and cannot, but also for the cultural output of what this industry is producing. And as long as we are going to, now I'm just outside of the purely regulatory aspect, but more like policy and self-regulatory maybe aspect of the industry. What is happening is that basically as society is turning their back to pornography and these tech giants are dominating the market, they are filling up all the public discourse on the topic. This is why they've become the paradigm for the youth, and this is concerning, but it could have been prevented and can be avoided if only we make it more rich and more diverse. Breaking up these tech giants, as in any other field dominated by tech giants, by the way, can really, really improve the quality of what's going on there.
Thank you. So now feel free to come to our microphones and ask some questions. Thank you.
Nice. Well, if there's no one yet, please feel free to come up, and then I because I also have one more, maybe.
I think we have one more question. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm very inspired, and I'm taking a lot home today and to work. And I hope I can make this quick. On how feminism and porn works together, I don't have it worked out. But I think there's always power involved when it's about bodies and sex and intimacy. So I also, like, there are feminist porn platforms. This is what I will come back to with my questions. And these platforms also have, like, there are scandals there because also women in power on these platforms make mistakes and abuse their power, maybe abuse people. And they also have categories like teens or barely legal or something like this. And I also don't think you can ban porn. That's not the solution for the people that suffer under the circumstances. I think, Alessandro, what you said was important to, like, kind of embrace the revolution and do it with culture and, like, with social work, because my dream scenario would be to guarantee that only people work in the field that are really, really safe and that don't do it for the money, because in the end your body is the only thing you can sell. This is why people suffer in this industry and porn and sex work and everything. So I think that would be the solution, to use social work and education to do that. And I wanted to ask if you have any insights in, like, these feminist, smaller porn platforms and how they work with their algorithms maybe, and how they want to ensure data safety and stuff. Thank you so much.
Very quickly, to the last thing you said. In Europe, Erika Last, entrepreneur from Sweden, she's based in Barcelona and does a lot of interesting feminist material. In the US, Cindy Gallop, she has a platform called Make Love Not Porn, She's originally from the UK, but I think that the biggest market for that platform is the US. So these are just examples if you want to study them. And just to pick up on what you said, because I think it's very important to make this point across today. Yeah, it is absolutely crucial to understand that abolishing and creating these draconian solutions will not fix it. Like just pushing the problem away will not fix it, because the day that we actually really, getting back to age verification, create age verification systems that block access to minors to these very ugly platforms, we don't want the kids to be there. All right, we've seen it, for instance, with streaming, with peer-to-peer platforms. The moment that you block access to one platform online, this is when you see other 15 appearing somewhere else on the web. So it's basically impossible. The problem cannot be addressed going against it. We need to accommodate and understand the lesson that is coming from it. So that's why I believe that culture is the way to go here.
And as maybe we all know, has happened in the last couple of years as well, is that we have reappropriated some of the terms that have been derogatory in the past. So now slutting is actually not considered such a bad thing anymore, right? Because like there were some like, yeah, I don't know, just girls some couple of years ago that were just like, yeah, I mean, I'm slutty, like, let's just dress slutty and like, woo. And so now you see actually on the TikTok platform and stuff like this, you have a very big like bimbo movement where actually is like this hyper-sexualized, like super, yeah, like, how do you say, like anything that would make a second wave feminism like really bite their tongue, you know, and like they would really not like what they see. But this is actually kind of, you can see that this is a reaction of, yeah, our own way of dealing with the over-sexualization is to kind of say, yeah, it's a problem if you over-sexualize us, but if we start over-sexualizing ourselves, it's like a completely different story. We enter a completely different realm. And yeah, I think it's like, in that way, indeed super possible that we all destigmatize having sexual pleasure. And for me, if yeah, like the people that I see that are more really anti-porn, they tend to not be, yeah, the feminists I know, right? Like if I, yeah, and I thought also for me, the OnlyFans, even though there is a lot of problems inside OnlyFans, there is a way in which OnlyFans is actually a really lovely platform for a lot of, yeah, people who struggle to get money actually kind of are like, hey, I can just show my tits and then get money. It's pretty good. And this has overall, I think, improved our way of talking among girls about sexuality. And yeah, specifically OnlyFans also, I think, outsources the comment stuff. So the porn actress and the one who is sharing their imagery is actually not the one who has to reply to all the misogynistic bullcrap. That's like someone else, right? So that's kind of fun about OnlyFans, the way that they solve this misogyny issue. In general, I think it's important that we, if you look at it from this feminist perspective, that we really look at harm reductive measures. So in terms of deepfake pornography, for instance, we just need to cut a line there. We need to say, look, no one's images who this AI was trained on have been asked if their body was okay to sell in this way. No one whose face is used was asked. You know, only men are making profit off of this stuff. You know, it's mostly harmful. Therefore, we might well have to stop it, right? So I think it's like a good way to look at the problem, to really look at where the harm lies and how you can help these people. So we now have this like advocacy campaign that is called Girls Want Cyber Justice. And it launched yesterday. We made an open letter, and the main point of that advocacy is also we need to provide care and help for women that or girls that are targeted by these yeah, technologies, and not immediately go for a tech solution, because you'll see a lot of money go into filtering or hashing or all sorts of things that kind of could work but won't necessarily work. And what does work is providing these women with actual legal help so that they can file charges and like do the work required to get these people behind the bars that they have to be behind. they do this type of stuff.
Yeah, I also want to add something. I'm pretty sure that feminists and pornography doesn't have to be something opposite, but I would say just because the content is a feminist perspective or a queer perspective doesn't have to be that the production is feminist. So that's why I think it's very important to differentiate that. Also, Erika Lust has I heard she has some problems with the production because production is always complicated, and just because the content it's important for the viewers, it's important for sexual education, but it's also important to see it as work and also to see it in this broader context of platforms and why platforms are working, like Uber, but also all this user-generated is because we have like such a big social inequality in the world. That's why the people have to do this work, and they have to do it for not good conditions. And first, this has to somehow to be solved, of course, with other regulations, because that's why all this big platforms are using this very vulnerable position of women. So that's why we have to support them also as workers, and not only just because the content that we think that also the production was a feminist production. Sorry, that was my.
Great, thank you so much. I hope we gave you an insight on how we are reimagining porn, and we will see that the Digital Services Act also is not the only regulation, as Martin Huseweg is saying. We also have the DMA, the fundamental rights, the GDPR, they all come into interplay, and we will see how they work together to regulate our porn industry. So thank you very much.